Black waitress helps the deaf grandmother of a millionaire. Her secret left, everyone speechless. The lunch crowd filled the air with quiet chatter and clinking glasses when Tasha Brooks hurried between tables, balancing plates with practiced grace. She was invisible to most guests. Just another waitress moving through luxury she could never afford. But her eyes stopped when an elderly woman sat alone, struggling to get the waiter's attention. The woman's hands moved in gentle, uncertain gestures. No one seemed to understand her. Tasha placed her tray aside and walked over. Her fingers began to move with quiet confidence, forming shapes that carried warmth and meaning. The woman's face lit up in relief. Someone finally understood her sign language. A hush fell across the restaurant. Even the piano paused. No one had ever seen Tasha do that before. Whispers traveled fast. The deaf woman was Evelyn Thompson, grandmother of billionaire Malik Thompson, who owned half the city's skyline. And this small act of kindness from a waitress was about to ripple far beyond that dining room. If stories of strength, justice, and second chances inspire you, make sure to subscribe and like the video. You will not want to miss how this one unfolds. Evelyn smiled, touched by Tasha's kindness. But at the next table, her manager, Rebecca Lang, watched with a tightening jaw, her envy rising like a storm cloud. Rebecca Lang's heels clicked sharply across the polished marble floor as she approached. Her smile was thin, her tone sweet with poison. She congratulated Tasha in front of everyone, calling her impressive for entertaining a customer. Then, with a tilt of her head, she added that Tasha should probably stick to her actual job instead of showing off. The laughter from nearby staff felt like knives against skin. Moments ago, the restaurant had admired her compassion. Now, all eyes looked away. Tasha lowered her gaze and quietly nodded, swallowing the sting. She had learned long ago that humility was her only shield. Still, deep inside, something ached. Not from embarrassment, but from the cruel way kindness could be punished. Rebecca was not done. Later that afternoon, she called Tasha into the back office. Stacks of paperwork lined the desk, and Rebecca leaned back, pretending to review a schedule. Her tone was casual when she said the restaurant needed someone in the dishwashing area for the rest of the week. Tasha understood the message beneath the words. This was not about work. It was about putting her back in her place. "Of course," Tasha said softly, her voice steady. She walked away without protest. Behind her, Rebecca smirked, satisfied by the small victory. The dishwashing station was a world apart from the dining hall. Humid air, dripping faucets, and clattering trays. Tasha tied her apron tighter and began scrubbing, her mind echoing with thoughts she never spoke aloud. Leah's school fees were due next month. Her sister had dreams of becoming a nurse, and Tasha was determined not to let those dreams fade. Every shift, every tip, every aching hour mattered. Her co-workers avoided eye contact. Some pitied her. Others stayed silent, too afraid of Rebecca's authority. Tasha did not blame them. Power in that place did not belong to people like her. But what hurt most was the subtle cruelty that followed. The whispered jokes, the misplaced orders blamed on her, the way Rebecca called her sweetheart, with a condescending smile that made the word feel dirty. Days turned to weeks, and the pattern deepened. Rebecca began assigning her the worst shifts, deliberately pairing her with coworkers who undermined her. When Tasha tried to explain a mistake she had not made, Rebecca interrupted with a cold smile. "You people always have excuses," she said, low enough for only Tasha to hear. The words cut sharper than any shout, but Tasha held her silence. She would not let Rebecca see her break. Each night she walked home past the glowing city lights, her hands raw, her spirit heavy. Leah would already be asleep at the small apartment they shared, her textbooks open beside her. Tasha would smile, whispering a promise to keep going, no matter what it cost. Underneath that quiet strength, something began to shift. Humiliation no longer felt like defeat. It began to feel like evidence, proof of how deep the injustice ran. One evening, after another false accusation, Tasha stood in the storage room and looked at her phone. The screen's reflection showed a woman who was tired but unbroken. From that moment, she decided she would stop suffering in silence. She began documenting every insult, every unfair shift, every lie that tried to bury her. Tasha's notebook was old, its cover faded and edges soft from years of use. Inside, every page carried quiet truths, dates, names, and words that had once cut deep. What no one knew was that she had been recording these moments for 8 long years. It had started as a way to survive, but over time it became something greater. Each note was not just about her pain. It was about every worker who had been silenced before her. She wrote down every insult that hid behind polite smiles, every unfair schedule that pushed her to exhaustion, every evaluation twisted by bias. The notebook became her secret weapon, proof that she was not imagining the cruelty surrounding her. Whenever Rebecca smirked or made another small joke, Tasha's eyes would flicker with calm awareness. The woman thought she was breaking her. In truth, she was helping her build a case. At work, Tasha's quiet defiance grew stronger. When Rebecca barked an order, Tasha obeyed, but her eyes never dropped anymore. She met her manager's gaze with a calm that unnerved her. Sometimes it was just a nod, sometimes a breath, but it was enough to make Rebecca's confidence waver for a moment. Power had always been silent in that restaurant. Now it was starting to shift, quietly, in Tasha's favor. Outside the restaurant, the world moved on. But somewhere in that city, Malik Thompson remembered the waitress who had helped his grandmother that day. The memory would not leave him. The way she signed gently. The way the entire room had gone still. He asked his assistant to find out who she was, though he kept his curiosity private. Malik was a man used to control, but something about that act of kindness had stayed with him. Days later, one of the restaurant's investors mentioned that Malik had asked about the service staff. The rumor reached Rebecca like fire. Her stomach tightened, fear mixing with envy. If Malik ever discovered how she treated that waitress, her career would crumble. She decided she could not allow Tasha to be seen as anything but a problem. Rebecca's punishment became sharper, more personal. She reassigned Tasha to late-night shifts, made her clean floors long after closing, and took tips that were meant for her. Whenever Tasha's co-workers tried to speak up, they were quickly silenced with threats about losing their jobs. The kitchen's laughter turned uneasy. People avoided her not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Still, Tasha stayed calm. She had seen too many good people lose everything by reacting in anger. Her strength lived in patience. Every time Rebecca tried to humiliate her, Tasha silently added another note to her file. Every insult was now evidence, every order another page in her growing archive of truth. Sometimes, during slow nights, she would glance at the reflection of herself in the kitchen window. She barely recognized the woman looking back, not because she was broken, but because she was stronger than she had ever been. Beneath the exhaustion, her eyes carried something fierce and steady. She knew she was waiting for something, though she did not know what yet. Leah noticed the changes, too. At home, her sister smiled less, spoke less, but there was a purpose in her silence. When Leah asked if everything was all right, Tasha only said, "Not yet, but it will be." Those words became a quiet promise that echoed in their small apartment, stronger than any prayer. At the restaurant, Malik's quiet curiosity began to turn into action. He started visiting again, arriving without notice, observing quietly from the corner table. Rebecca would rush to greet him, flustered, forcing smiles. Tasha, unaware that fate was circling back toward her, kept her distance, focused on her work. One evening, Malik saw her again. She was wiping tables near the back, her movements slow but precise. When she looked up and their eyes met, a flicker of recognition passed between them. Malik's expression softened. He nodded slightly, but Tasha quickly turned away, unsure if she had imagined it. Rebecca noticed. The sight of Malik's attention sent panic through her. That night, she called Tasha into the office once more. Her words were venom wrapped in civility. She accused Tasha of being distracting, of trying to get noticed. When Tasha calmly denied it, Rebecca leaned closer, her voice sharp. "Do not think that one good deed makes you special," she hissed. "People like you always forget where they belong." That was the moment the line was crossed. Tasha stood still, her heart steady. She did not argue. She only met Rebecca's glare and said quietly, "You will regret saying that." Then she turned and walked away, leaving the door open behind her. She did not know that at that exact moment, Malik Thompson had entered the restaurant again. This time, not as a curious customer, but as a man who had come looking for her. The morning sunlight poured across the glass walls of Silverstone as the staff rushed to prepare for inspection day. Whispers ran through the kitchen. Malik Thompson was coming for an unscheduled investor visit. Everyone moved faster, polishing silverware and resetting tables that were already perfect. For Rebecca Lang, this was her chance to prove herself. Her heart raced, and every word she spoke carried sharp edges. She adjusted her blazer twice before stepping out to greet him. Malik entered the restaurant with quiet authority, his presence commanding attention without effort. His calm eyes scanned the place, not with the gaze of a critic but of someone searching for truth beneath polish. The employees lined up, pretending not to tremble. Rebecca forced a smile. "Mr. Thompson, what an honor to have you here. If we had known—" He cut her off gently. "I prefer to see things as they are, not as they are prepared to be." Her smile stiffened. "Of course, sir. Everything is running smoothly, as always." Malik nodded slowly. "Good. I remember being here a while back. There was a waitress who helped my grandmother. What was her name again?" Rebecca froze. "Ah, yes. Tasha Brooks. She still works here, though. She has been a bit difficult to manage lately. Malik's eyes lifted. Difficult? In what way? Rebecca's tone became confident again, mistaking his curiosity for agreement. She is often distracted, unprofessional at times. I have had to discipline her repeatedly. She does not really fit the image we try to maintain here. He raised an eyebrow. The image? Rebecca hesitated. You know, people like her tend to misunderstand boundaries. They get too comfortable. The words slipped out before she realized the weight they carried. Silence settled between them like a knife. Malik leaned forward, his expression unreadable. People like her? Rebecca's throat tightened. I just mean… He interrupted softly. Finish your sentence, Ms. Lang. Her confidence collapsed. I only meant that she is not as polished as the others. She came from a different background. Malik's voice dropped lower. Different does not mean less. He straightened his jacket, his gaze sharp. Call her here, please. Rebecca's palms grew damp as she motioned to a passing waiter. Moments later, Tasha walked in from the back. Her uniform slightly wrinkled, but her posture calm and steady. She met Malik's eyes briefly, then looked at Rebecca, whose fake smile returned like armor. Mr. Thompson wanted to see you, Rebecca said, her voice thin. I was just explaining your performance issues. Tasha nodded slightly. I am sure you were. Malik's eyes never left her face. Tasha, I remember you. You helped my grandmother that day. She still talks about you. Tasha smiled faintly. She is a kind woman, sir. Rebecca's discomfort deepened. Sir, I assure you she has not been as respectful since then. I have done everything to maintain discipline. Tasha reached into her apron pocket and pulled out her phone. You mean discipline like this? Her tone was soft, but the weight of her words silenced the room. She pressed play. The sound of Rebecca's voice filled the air. Every insult, every veiled threat, every manipulation echoed through the restaurant. Words like, people like you. You should be grateful we even hired you. And, I can make your sister's life harder if you do not listen. Cut through the air like glass. No one moved. Forks froze midair. The only sound was Rebecca's recorded cruelty echoing through the speakers. Her face drained of color. Stop that! Rebecca snapped, lunging forward. Tasha stepped back calmly. You have been reminding me for years that I do not belong here. Maybe it is time everyone heard what belonging sounds like to you. Malik's voice broke the silence, calm but cold. Enough. Rebecca turned toward him desperately. Sir, she is lying. These recordings are edited. I can explain. Malik raised a hand, silencing her instantly. You threatened her sister. You humiliated an employee who represented this company better than anyone in this room. You have shown exactly what kind of leadership destroys progress. He looked around at the staff, all watching, frozen between fear and relief. From this moment, he said slowly, you are no longer employed here. Rebecca's jaw fell open. You cannot fire me. I just did, Malik replied. Your access will be removed immediately. Security will escort you out. The room was still as she stumbled back, her voice breaking into pleas, but no one moved to help her. The same people she had bullied now looked at her with quiet satisfaction. She tried to speak, but her words came out as choked apologies that no one believed. Tasha stood motionless, her phone still in her hand. She had dreamed of this moment, but now that it was here, she did not smile. Her calm was steady, almost graceful. Malik turned to her. You could have gone to anyone with this. Why wait? Her answer was simple. Because truth takes time to be heard. I wanted to make sure it was loud enough when it finally spoke. Malik studied her for a moment, admiration flickering behind his steady expression. What do you plan to do next? Tasha took a slow breath. I am only getting started. The room remained quiet, filled with the weight of what had just happened. The woman who had been invisible now stood as the center of every gaze. Power had changed hands, not through rage, but through patience, courage, and truth. 6 months later, the ballroom of the Grand Thompson Hotel shimmered with light and quiet anticipation. Chandeliers glowed above a crowd gathered to celebrate something the hospitality world had never seen before. A program designed to make every guest, no matter their ability, feel understood. On the stage stood Tasha Brooks, no longer wearing an apron but a tailored suit, her voice steady as she signed her words while speaking them aloud. Behind her a banner read, The Language of Respect, an inclusion initiative by Thompson Hotels. The journey had not been easy. The nights she spent crying in silence, the humiliation she had endured, and the strength it took to keep her dignity intact. All of it had led here. Tasha had turned her pain into something powerful. She was now the director of community relations for the Thompson Hotel Group, a position Malik Thompson had personally offered after witnessing her courage that day. As she spoke, the room listened in complete stillness. Every sentence came from experience, not theory. Understanding someone's language, she said, is not just about words. It is about respect. It is about saying, "You belong here," without having to speak at all. Applause broke out, but it was Evelyn Thompson's smile from the front row that truly filled the room with warmth. The woman who had once struggled to communicate at that very restaurant now watched a world where her voice, and others like hers, could finally be heard. Malik sat beside his grandmother, his expression proud but thoughtful. He had built hotels and towers, but what Tasha had built tonight felt far greater. She had built connection. When their eyes met across the room, a silent understanding passed between them. The kind born from shared purpose, not status. Leah stood near the edge of the stage, holding her scholarship envelope tightly against her chest. She had started her first semester at university just 2 months ago, something her sister's courage had made possible. Tears filled her eyes as she watched Tasha address the audience, signing every word with confidence. It was hard to believe this was the same woman who once came home with tired hands and quiet heartbreak. After the ceremony, people lined up to thank Tasha, employees, guests, even executives who once doubted her. Some signed a few words awkwardly, their gestures clumsy but sincere. Each attempt meant more to her than any applause could. Later that night, as the crowd thinned, Malik approached her. "You turned a wound into wisdom," he said softly. "Most people would have walked away." Tasha smiled faintly. "I tried to many times, but when life keeps showing you the same lesson, maybe it is because you are meant to teach it." Outside the ballroom windows, city lights glimmered like 1,000 tiny affirmations. The girl who once cleaned tables was now shaping a future for thousands of others. Her voice had found its echo. Far across town, the world had moved on, except for one person. Rebecca Lang sat alone in a dim cafe, staring at job listings on her phone. Her name had become a warning in the industry she once ruled. Every message she sent went unanswered. The same silence she had forced on others now surrounded her, heavy and cold. While Tasha's world filled with light and purpose, Rebecca's world dimmed into isolation. Yet justice was never about revenge. It was about balance. Tasha did not need to see her fall. Her own rise had already rewritten everything. And as the lights faded from the gala, one truth lingered. Strength is not measured by how loud you fight, but by how quietly you rebuild. Dignity, patience, and truth had spoken louder than any voice could. Morning light crept through the blinds of a small apartment in Queens. The walls were bare, the air heavy with quiet regret. Rebecca Lang sat hunched over a chipped table, scrolling through her phone for job postings that never led anywhere. Every search ended the same way: rejection. Her name had become a shadow in her own industry. The managers she once intimidated now avoided her completely. Some had even blocked her number. She played a news clip on her cracked phone screen, and the familiar face of Tasha Brooks filled the frame. Standing at a university podium, Tasha spoke with calm confidence to an audience of students and leaders. "True revenge," she said, her voice gentle but certain, "is not about destruction. It is about building something so good that it makes your enemies irrelevant." The audience erupted in applause. But in that tiny apartment, the sound echoed like judgment. Rebecca lowered her gaze, realizing that the very arrogance she once wore like armor had become her downfall. Her silence was no longer power. It was punishment. On her feed, story after story appeared. Headlines that celebrated Tasha Brooks as a voice for justice and inclusion. From Waitress to World Changer. The woman who rebuilt hospitality with her hands. Tasha Brooks' Sign Language Initiative expands to 50 companies nationwide. Each headline cut deeper, not out of envy, but out of recognition. Rebecca had spent years trying to break a woman who refused to bend, and now that same woman was changing an entire industry. At the Thompson Inclusion Gala in Los Angeles, Malik Thompson introduced Tasha before a crowd of 500 executives. "What she created," he said, "is not just a corporate program. It is a movement, a reminder that equality is not charity. It is justice in motion." Tasha stepped forward, dressed in white, her sign language flowing gracefully with every word. Behind her, a giant screen displayed images of hotel staff across the country learning to communicate with deaf guests, greeting them with understanding instead of confusion. She paused for a moment, letting her words settle. "When you give someone a chance to be seen, you give them a reason to believe they belong." The crowd stood in a wave of applause, but Tasha's eyes softened when she spotted Evelyn and Leah smiling proudly in the front row. Evelyn's hand rested on Malik's arm. "She reminds me of you," she whispered, her eyes glistening. Malik nodded slightly. "No," he replied. "She reminds me of what we should all be." The program Tasha built had already transformed over 50 companies. Restaurants, hotels, and schools were now adopting her model, teaching staff not only sign language, but empathy, a language that needed no translation. She was invited to universities as a pioneer in corporate equality, standing before young women who saw in her a reflection of their own quiet strength. But despite her success, Tasha never spoke with pride. She spoke with purpose. Every interview, every speech, always returned to one truth: that justice is not about defeating others, it is about creating something better for those who come next. Meanwhile, Rebecca's world had shrunk to 4 walls and fading hope. She sometimes walked past restaurants where new managers stood at the front, greeting guests with warmth and kindness. None of them knew her, and that anonymity hurt more than hatred ever could. One evening, she saw a new article trending, a video clip of Tasha's latest award ceremony. The headline read, "A Decade of Dignity. The Tasha Brooks Foundation launches for workplace equality." Rebecca clicked play. Tasha stood before a cheering crowd, her voice clear and calm. 8 years ago, I thought my life had ended when I was told I did not belong. But every insult, every closed door, was a lesson in disguise. I learned that real power does not come from control. It comes from compassion. And real victory is not in revenge, but in rebuilding what was broken. Rebecca watched until the end. Her reflection on the screen looked older, smaller, and utterly defeated. She had spent her career enforcing limits. Tasha had spent hers removing them. Outside her window, laughter from a nearby cafe filled the air, a simple sound she once took for granted. For the first time, Rebecca realized what she had truly lost. Not just her job, but her humanity. Back at the gala, the music swelled as Malik joined Tasha on stage for the closing speech. "When Tasha Brooks served my grandmother that day," he said, pausing with a smile, "she was not just serving food, she was serving destiny." The crowd stood, applauding until the hall trembled. Tasha looked toward the lights, her heart steady and full. Her journey had begun in silence, a conversation between 2 hands, and ended with a roar of understanding that could be felt across the world. Because greatness is not about defeating others. It is about rising above them, building something so strong, so good, that even those who once tried to silence you must live in the echo of your truth. If this story touched your heart, do not forget to subscribe for more true-to-life stories that remind us. Greatness is not about defeating others. It is about rising above them,